is December already.
No, I really
I know.
can't. I really can't. And yet, it is December. 2026 is coming. It is coming full steam ahead, which means a lot of my clients, and I bet your clients too, are
Mhm.
talking about one theme, and that is strategic planning in 2026.
Absolutely. Just something seems to happen around about the 7th of December where everybody goes, ooh, you know, 21, 20, it's not even 21, what is it? 17 shopping days left. What am I going to do? And, joking aside, I think for a lot of, particularly small businesses, for a lot of small business owners, the Christmas break is also, unless you're in retail, but that's a whole other conversation. That Christmas break is that inhale and think that happens at the end of the year. And for many, even medium sized businesses, December, January are kind of when it gets done, right? So today, let's talk about it. Let's talk about 2026 and forecasting because for sure, well, I mean, come on. I think it's so crazy that our world has gone into chaos. I wrote a book about navigating it. So you don't have to convince me it's important. But I mean, I think as a lot of my clients and very likely a lot of yours are looking out to 2026 and what the year ahead holds, how do you know what to plan for? Right? Uncertainty is the death of business.
Well, and it's interesting because as we reflect back on 2025, it's one of the questions I actually like to ask. Let's go into a
Yeah.
session thinking about what went right, what went wrong, and what we can change, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand those pieces. I don't know about you, but a lot of my clients, myself included, went into January 2025 with a plan
Yes.
that by February was obsolete.
Yes.
And so when we do this year, looking at risks, looking at our base assumptions and scenario planning, making it far more
Yeah.
important because we sometimes just don't know what we don't know. But wouldn't it be great to be able to have a plan or a thought in the back of our head to be able to go, oh, by February, this is what happens, and I just need to pull out this plan because we are ahead of schedule or we are behind or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes when you get in when you're on a journey, it's really helpful to know where you're headed. And in business, sometimes I don't know that we do.
Can I ask you with your clients if you
Yeah.
do the same thing that I do? I've had a lot of clients from some incubators that we provide services for come in and they want to use our services, and I'm excited about that. And they all come in and they go, I want a 5 year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I don't, I remember 20 years ago, a 5 year, 3 year plan, that was doable. You had a bit more predictability and change didn't happen as fast as it does
Mm-hmm.
now. But at this point in time, when companies come in and they're under that 10 million mark, I think it's far more important to have a 1 year plan that you can meet than a 3 year plan that you just had
Oh.
fun creating.
Oh, okay. See, I use them a little bit differently. I use them a little bit differently. Now, I mean, frankly, that's probably part of the difference between the work you do in operations and operations optimization and the work that I do, which is more strategic visioning, right? But how I encourage my clients to think about their 10-year, 5-year, 3-year plans is really about using it as a mechanism for what's my vision for the business I want to grow. And so when we do that long range planning, we're talking less about the market and the specific tactical pieces that need to happen, and a lot more about what is the life that I'm looking to create for myself, for my employees? What is the impact I'm looking to have on my community? What, what is my guiding purpose? What is my big vision? And then okay, what needs to be true in order for that to have happened?
I
And
like
so it's really about aiming the rifle, right? Less about scaling the mountain. And once we've got a direction that we're aiming in, then we work it back to now, how far can we get in 12 months,
Yes.
right?
I like that. I add a question in there because I think a lot of owners also don't know how to define success
Mm,
for them.
yes.
They have trouble really going, yeah, I mean, we have revenue targets and profit. I want my team to be happy. I don't know how many owners I talk to that say that really put the team first. And as great as that is, they wind up burning themselves out. And
Yes.
so, what does success look like for you, the owner, for you, the business leader?
Right. Right. Very true. And it's funny, I talk to a lot of women business leaders in their businesses who are afraid of growth because they view growth as more responsibility and more drain on their time and less freedom to be the kind of parent they want to be. I don't know if you talk to young women who are in this boat. And I'm like, no, please. You so much to contribute. And I've been there, done it. I lived it, right? I started my business when my daughter was 4. Um, but growth done well is going to get you freedom. We're back. Well, that was fun. It's December. Everybody's Christmas shopping. But after a short freeze, we are back. And we were talking about success measures and really setting a vision for growth. I've had a couple of conversations, Susan, this week, just actually, with some young women who are early in their entrepreneurial career, successful businesses that are growing. They have more demand than they can fulfill with the team that they have. And there's a real fear that actually leaning into that growth opportunity that they have in front of them is going to mean more work, more hours for them, more problems, more stress, more overhead, more things that aren't really great in a business, and less of the things that they're really looking for in their business, which is, freedom. And these are young women. So a lot of them are thinking about, is it time to start a family? What does it mean when I become a parent? And how do I manage all of these pieces? And there's this, if I can't do it myself, it can't be done mentality sometimes that happens. And I chuckle a little because I don't know if you see it, but I certainly see that also with other clients who aren't at the same place in their life.
I absolutely do. And it's a theme that comes
Mhm.
through, I find, anywhere between the 750,000 mark in
Yep.
annual revenue and 5 million in annual revenue. And I
Yeah.
call it the valley of death for a reason, because
Hmm.
more often than not, when you are successful and you find the business is growing, to get through that hump, to have the right people in place and know what the right structure looks like and have the support that actually gets you to that next level, to that 5, 10 million, it's not the same thing. And so the skill sets can be a little bit different. How you think about the
Yeah.
business is really interesting and different. And I find a number of my past clients, I've got some that are doing through this conversation right now, but a number of the past clients, it's also about the desire for a great customer experience and the concern that if they're not the ones at the forefront and they're not monitoring and watching all the time, that nobody else will be able to do it as well
Mm.
and at the same level of detail. Do you find that too?
Yeah. I think it depends on the size of the business and where you are on your business maturity journey. I definitely see that a lot in trade specific businesses where you have a craftsperson who has been so successful that they've actually built a business around their craft or around their trade, right? And there are some things as the business owner you should never give up. If it's the thing you do better than anyone else on the planet, that's a big part of what's making money in your business. So I see it a lot there. And then I also see it with, and you're going to love this one, people who haven't got strong process documentation,
Mhm.
right? And it's as human beings, we're not very good at articulating what we do every step of what we do and the sequence in which we do it. It's one of the reasons a lot of AI projects fail, is because we actually are building automations that are skipping steps and we don't know the steps that are skipped. But um, we're not great at it. And so when you don't have that documentation of do this, then this, then this, that's being vetted and tested, that makes it hard to let go. That does make it hard to let go. So let's bring this back to forecasting and planning and how that impacts what you're going to do for your strategic plan for the year. Because there are other consequences to some of these things that, you don't know they're hitting you until the post-mortem. And in a perfect world, you can avoid that post-mortem, because the post-mortem is never a good thing. Um, do you know where I'm going with
Do.
this?
I do. I do. And even though some people have great success, I still think that postmortem, even though we usually talk about it when things go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
it's still really important to do, because you learn what went right so that you can repeat what went right.
Yes.
And I find it very interesting is when you're looking at setting goals, when you're looking at the next year, so 2026 is coming up. And so, what do we want to do? What's our must hit? What do we actually need?
Mm.
What does the business require for a bare minimum to be successful? Now, that's great to talk about, but what's the stretch? And a lot of this sort of stuff comes back to basic metrics,
Mm-hmm.
KPIs. I know we've talked about that before, but the visibility that that gives you to make informed strategic decisions and have conversations about risk is really important.
Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. And can I just add, you said the bare minimum for the business to survive. So many business leaders make the mistake of equating bare minimum with break even.
Yes.
And break even is not actually enough for your business to survive.
Mhm. Well, you and I had a conversation a few months ago, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very interesting. And I find that this is true in a lot of conversations. And it's frankly why I don't talk about what I do. Because as soon as people hear, oh, you have a title of CEO, oh, you're an entrepreneur, they just go, oh, therefore, you make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
But in reality, and this is true of the very first version, scaled version of my business model. I said, I'm going to take 20% off the top. I'm going to go out. It was fine for a little bit. And then I kept feeling it in the bank account. And I was like, why do I feel, I'm working hard. The leads are going through, they're closing. The team is on it. Like, why is this not working? Why do I feel poorer
Yeah.
now than when I was a solopreneur? And it was simple, because the business model that I had based on 20%, well, the first 10% was either the sales, the commission, the referral. The second 10% was the marketing pieces that needed to be done. Then there was the Stripe fees for 3%. And now I'm death by a thousand cuts, because I'm paying the team to actually do the work for me. But they don't
Right.
see it that way. And so it's very interesting conversations when we talk about scaling, when we talk about growing and knowing that visibility. That's so
Oh, yeah. Looking at a business's, I start every engagement with a new client looking at the financials. And when you come into your annual planning, the financials are a really important place to be. And it's funny because sometimes you'll find with a business owner, they're a little hesitant about opening the books, you know, a little uncomfortable, right? We're brought up not to talk about money. There's a bit of shame involved. I've certainly felt that shame in my own business where I'm, tearing my hair out. I remember one year I was really just, I couldn't figure it out right now. I'm just beating my head against a brick wall. And I had a coach who was, well, we're going to cut. And I'm like, I've cut everything. I have, trust me, I've optimized every single thing. They said, we're gonna figure this out. So they spent, I'm not joking you, 4 hours with me on a group call going through the financials of my agency line item by line item.
Bet that
We
was
went through the P&L first. And if I couldn't off the top of my head list everything that was in that, we went through it looking for things to cut. 4 hours later, this one of the women that was on the call, so I had like a little board, right? One of the women had run a company a lot like mine, multimillionaire, very successful. The other woman was an accountant for businesses a lot like mine, and so they've gone through this financial review with me. And she looked at me and she said, "You got to have a pricing problem because you don't have a cost problem."
Yeah.
Right. And so we start there, in that I understand that hesitation. But the reality is, if you are that skinny in your margins, you have a pricing problem. You are not charging enough in your business to sustain the operation of the business and have enough left over to take care of what you need to take care of in your business. And that's not just pay your expenses. That's put money aside for a rainy day fund, for those inevitable dips in market demand, so that you get to keep your people employed and you don't crash the first time February 2025 happens. That's so that you can put some money in your own pocket, right? Most business owners in this country are earning sub 100K. A significant number are earning. Now, there's all sorts of tax and yada and yada and yada. But at the end of the day, even if you're earning sub 200K, you could get a job doing what you do for somebody else and make more money than you make today, right? So there's got to be a reason for it. And so I think a lot of times this happens in a business and we don't look at the pricing, right? And then there's a flip side to that. Whereas if your margins are really, really healthy, like industry leading, rewriting the games of the finances, healthy, that actually introduces a risk.
Tell me more.
Well, I mean, let's say that you're in an industry where a typical margin for the industry is going to be 17%. Right? If your margins are 25, 28%, you can pat yourself on the back. You're doing pretty good. If your margins are 40%, do you see a risk there? Or what do you think? I mean, if you knew that a competitor of yours was charging significantly more than you're charging, was running 40% margins, what would you be looking to exploit?
Well, I would be questioning what they're delivering, because there's no way. If I'm looking at what I know, it's not about the cost efficiency piece. It's about
Right.
the quality of what's going there. So why can't I just go after their clients?
Right. And that is exactly what happens. There's a couple of things. There's either a reputation risk that's lurking buried in your customer relations, where you have some kind of burbling dissent. There's apathy that happens when, with clients where it would be a headache to change suppliers. So is the headache, right? And we've had this conversation ourselves, right? Sometimes where, I know I need to change that supplier, but is the headache of doing it worth it at this moment in time? Can I make do for a period? So you have that, right? That is burbling in your customer satisfaction scores. And then you have the risk that actually you're premium priced and you aren't delivering a value and so there's a margin there for someone to come in and deliver a slightly better value at a slightly lower price and build a very nice business for themselves. We call that disruption. It's a nice fancy word for finding a way to do it. But there are lots of risks in there. You want to see that your margins are healthy. You want your margins at the top of your industry, but you also want to make sure that there's a reason those margins are there that is more than just cost cutting, more than just keeping an iron fist on the balance sheet.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I know we've hit the end of our time today, but I want to talk more on a future session, if we could, about risks, especially as we head into
Absolutely.
2026. See if we can do that.
Yeah. Let's pick that up next week.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right.